depart not hence, I pray thee, until I come unto thee, and bring forth my present, and set it before thee. And he said, I will tarry until you come again. And so here Gideon asks for the first sign. And so he goes and he leaves to prepare a present for the angel of Yah. Now, and the angel of God said unto him, verse 19, and Gideon went in and made ready a kid, and unleavened cakes of an ephah of flour. The flesh he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and brought it out unto him under the oak, and presented it. And the angel of God said unto him, take the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and lay them upon this rock, and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of Yahweh put forth the end of the staff that was in his hand, and touched the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and there rose up fire out of the rock, and consumed the flesh and the unleavened cakes. Then the angel of Yahweh departed from his sight. So here we see the first sign, but as we continue to read, we're going to see that Gideon was not satisfied with just this one sign. And I want you to know that that is a safe place to be. You see, what we're going to begin to understand is the difference between the request. The people in Matthew 12, when they asked for a request, Yahushua said to them, you seek for a sign. A wicked and an adulterous generation seek after a sign, but there will be no sign except for the sign of Jonah. But here, Gideon asked for a sign, and he is given a sign. And so when Gideon returned with the kid, the goat, that he went to prepare, and the broth and the unleavened cakes, and I won't get into the symbolism of all of that for the sake of time in this video. But when he returned with all that, this first sign was given to him. The angel touched it with his rod and caused fire to come out from the rocks and to consume the offering, the gift. Now, verse 21. Verse 22. And when Gideon perceived that he was an angel of Yahweh, Gideon said, alas, O my God, for because I have seen an angel of Yahweh face to face. He said, please get away from me. Go, leave me, I'm unclean. Verse 23, and Yahweh said unto him, peace be unto thee, fear not, thou shalt not die. Then Gideon built an altar there unto Yahweh, and called it Yahweh Shalom, meaning Yahweh is my peace, my shalom, nothing missing, nothing broken. Yahweh is my wholeness. Unto this day it is yet in Oprah of the Abizarites. Verse 25. And it came to pass the same night that Yahweh said unto him, take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that thy father hath, and cut down the grove that is by it. And build an altar unto Yahweh thy God unto the top, upon the top of this rock, in the ordered place, and take the second bullock, and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the grove which thou shalt cut down. And so Yah's first instruction to Gideon was to go and to cast down the high places of these idolatrous worshippers, the altars of Baal. Yah said, go cast it down, and I want you to burn a sacrifice and on that altar. Set up my altar in its place and burn a sacrifice on that altar unto me, the true and living Yahweh. And so, verse 25 I just read, and 26, and build an altar unto Yahweh thy God upon top of this rock in the ordered place, and take the second bullock, and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood and the grove which thou shalt cut down. Verse 27. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants, and did as Yahweh had said unto him. And so it was, because he feared his father's household and the men of the city, that he could not do it by day, that he did it by night. See, yeah, Gideon was still wrestling with some fear issues. He was still afraid. He hadn't realized the courage that Yah had placed in him yet. He didn't realize that he was in fact a mighty man of valor yet. And so he was fearful, and so what he did was he waited until nighttime to go and to cast down this altar and to set up an altar unto Yahweh in its place. And so Gideon was still operating in fear, but even though he was fearful, yet he was obedient. You see, when Yah began to open my eyes to his truth, even though I am fearful and was fearful and continue to be fearful, yet I do it in fear, but more than that fear, I do it in reverence of my master, Yahweh. And so, verse 28, and when the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and the grove was cut down that was by it, and the second bullock was offered up on the altar that was built. And they said one to another, who hath done this thing? And when they inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, hath done this thing. Then the men of the city said unto Joash, bring out thy son, that he may die, because he had cast down the altar of Baal, and because he had cut down the grove that was by it. And Joash said unto all that stood against him, will ye plead for Baal? Will he save him? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death whilst it is yet morning. If he be a god, let him plead for himself, because one hath cast down his altar. Therefore, on that day he called him Jerubbaal, saying, let Baal plead against him, because he had thrown down his altar. Verse 33. Then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the children of the east were gathered together, and went over and pitched in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of Yahweh came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and Abiezer was gathered after him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also was gathered after him. And he sent messengers unto Asher, and unto Zebulun, and unto Naphtali, and they came up to meet him. And Gideon said unto God, if thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said, behold, I will put a fleece of wool in the floor. And if the dew be on the fleece only, and it be dry upon all the earth beside, then shall I know that thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said. So here we see in verse 37, Gideon asks for a second sign. He was already given one sign when the angel of Yah caused the fire to come out from the rocks and to consume his offering. Now he's asking for a second sign, which in all reality is a third sign. Because after he had gone and tore down the altar of Baal, the men of the city were after him, and we just read here that he went out and he blew the trumpet, and all these men of these different tribes, Zebulun and Asher and other tribes, came and stood beside him. Yah had moved them to stand with their brother. And so now Gideon says, I'm going to put a fleece out on the floor, and if it's dry in the morning, then I know that you have called me to do this. But then Gideon thought about it some more. But Yah was patient. Verse 38. And it was so, for he rose up early on the morning and thrust the fleece together, and wringed the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. So the first sign he asked, if the fleece is wet and the ground is dry, then I know that I heard from you. I know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. But Gideon needed to know more. He needed to be reassured. And I believe why Gideon asked this was because he knew that the scriptures, Torah teaches that out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, a thing is established. And so he wanted to make sure that he was not operating out of his own mind and out of his own will. And so Yah did not get upset at him, because Yah knew that he was seeking confirmation. So here he asked again for another sign. And Gideon said unto God, Let not thine anger be hot against me, and I will speak but this once. Let me prove, I pray thee, but this once with the fleece. Let it now be dry only upon the fleece, and upon all the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew on all the ground. And so here Gideon asked for another sign, and again Yah was not upset at him, because Yah knew the motivation of his heart. Now, what's the difference between Gideon's motivation that got him the response that he got, which was patience, long-suffering, and a loving response, as opposed to the response that Yahushua gave to the scribes and the Pharisees who asked for a sign? Yahushua said to the scribes and the Pharisees in Matthew 12, A wicked and an adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but there will be no sign but the sign of Jonah. Yet Yahweh, who again is Yahushua, was patient with Gideon and gave him 4 signs altogether. And the difference is this, listen, the difference is this. The difference is that Gideon had a desire to please Yah. And Gideon wanted to be certain that he was not responding out of his own will, out of his own heart, in his own flesh. And so he sought confirmation from Yahweh. He knew that out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses a thing is established. And so therefore, each sign that he asked for was a witness to the word that was declared unto him. The difference there between Gideon and the scribes and the Pharisees was that they asked for a sign in hopes that Yahushua would not have been able to produce a sign, and therefore they would have been able to point the finger and to say, see, we told you he was a false prophet, stone him. You see, their motivation was off. They were looking for a reason to discredit Yahushua, while Gideon was looking for confirmation that I'm not walking in my own opinion. I'm not responding to my own desire because I'm tired of having to thresh wheat in a wine press. But rather, I just simply want to know for sure that I'm hearing from the true and living God. I desire to do nothing. I desire to speak nothing out of my own will. I simply desire to do his will. That's where Gideon was, where the scribes and the Pharisees were. They rejected the Messiah, just like those in our churches today who continue to preach this Jesus. Yet they reject the Messiah. They reject his law. Yet even Yahushua tells us that until heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or one tittle will pass away from his law. And so that's the difference. You have many people today prophesying out of their own heart, lying to people out of their own heart, saying, thus saith the Lord, when Yahweh has said nothing to them. But you see, as the true children of Yah, what motivates us to seek for a sign is the fact that we want to make sure that we're not speaking according to our own heart, out of our own heart. But we want to be certain that we're hearing from the Master. Whereas the wicked, they're seeking for other reasons. And so I encourage you to be careful in your speech, because as the scripture tells us in Matthew 12, as we read, every idle word will be judged on the day of judgment. Yah bless you, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.